Today, we're talking about lying. Lying is a massive piece that is ingrained in narcissistic personality disorder of how they're showing up, of what's going on. And it's a big piece that was ingrained inside of my life forever. Now, it didn't start off just being like, hey, I came out of my mom's womb and I was like, let's be a liar today, right? It didn't start off like that. It got to a place where I started to realize that certain things would get me in trouble, right? And certain things wouldn't get me in trouble. And certain lies would get me out of trouble. Or at least that's how I perceived it. So growing up, it was this piece of how do I get what I want? And how do I avoid the things that I don't want? And it became this piece of like, how do I actually do what I want to do? So I grew up in a very Christian home. My dad was an evangelist, then he was a pastor, then he was an evangelist, then he was a missionary. So I grew up very much ingrained in Christianity, in the church, in religious culture, all different aspects. And the thing that I have against some of that is the aspect that a lot of Christianity is about conformity versus it being about connection. Conformity meaning, hey, let's look and act and be a certain way because regardless if you're having a bad day, you still have to put on a good face to be able to show up, to be happy in front of people so that they get the good news and continue to be as wonderful and happy as you when you're still frustrated and hurting inside. Okay? Some of you might be offended by that, but I'm going to keep moving on. When we're dealing with this piece of lying, though, that got to be a piece that I started to see, hey, I had to show up a certain way even if I didn't feel like it. There was an incongruency there. Now, there's a difference between like, hey, I'm having a bad day and I still show up for work, right? But then there's also a piece of like showing up with a false mask, a false pretense of like, hey, I'm making it seem better than what it actually is instead of actually being honest with what's going on inside. So that was part of the culture and part of the piece that I came from and understood. So then lying got to be a place where I started to realize, hey, if I tell the truth and I get in trouble for it, and if I lie and then I don't get in trouble for it, maybe I could just lie and then I avoid the shame, the guilt, the trouble, the spankings, all that kind of stuff, and I don't have to worry about it. So that was kind of like an early childhood like thought, right? And then I get into high school. And when I went to high school, I was homeschooled for a lot of my life simply because we traveled, we moved around a ton. Then I went into a high school. And so a high school is where life got a little more convoluted because I went to a Christian high school, which is in my mind one of the worst things I could have ever done. But I went to a Christian high school thinking it was going to be great. The problem was I got into a Christian high school and I'm like, wait a second, these people say they're Christians, but they look like everybody else. So I guess it's okay if I do the same things as what they do. That's when a lot of my journey, well, there's some before that, but that's where a lot of the journey ramped up really quick inside of my dating life and inside of other girls. And I remember I had an experience where I had this girl that liked me. She said she liked me, all this kind of stuff. And I came back home and I told my parents. And when I told my parents, it was kind of this like immediate like reaction of like, beware of, females, finances, fame. Like that's just something you don't need to worry about, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a piece where I was just like shut down. And shut down in a place of like the emotional side. It wasn't a place where it was like a safe space. It wasn't abusive. It wasn't violent, but it was a piece of like, hey, I want to be able to talk about this. I don't understand this. This is a new thing. I'm excited about this. And parents being like, yeah, don't pay attention to that. And so I realized really quickly that that wasn't a piece that was an open topic. It wasn't a subject that we could really open up and talk about. So I went back and still engaged with this girl and still had a great time, et cetera, and just kept it a secret. Right. So the parents didn't know that we were together. Parents didn't know all these things. And so there became all of these different things that were happening that would be different lies about being with other girls. Okay. So high school, college, all this stuff, there's different things like that. College was more like dating. There's different aspects. Now, at a young age, well, not super young, but like a young age, probably around like 13 or so, was probably one of the first times I got introduced to porn. We actually got a shed that was delivered, and it was like someone else's shed that they had in their backyard forever, and they got delivered. And I was going through the shed and like cleaning it out, and there was like a porn magazine up top. And so I pulled that down and started looking through it, and I was like, never seen some of this stuff before, right? Like this is before we had access to all this like internet, right? And so I'm looking through this, and I'm like, okay, like I don't know what this is. This is bad. Threw it away, and then was like, nope, I kind of like that. Pulled it back out, and then threw it away. Like so, it got to be this thing, right? And this is a piece that I kept hidden for a long period of time, and then I never confessed it until after I'd thrown it away, and actually, like I think the trash got taken, and I was like, well, I guess that's it. So there's this other piece of like lies. Right. And then I started having like different lies in like smaller areas with smaller things. But then I started to realize that there was this trend. And the trend for me was oftentimes when I would lie, there would be these times where people would catch something and it might be like a silly lie. It might be something like just ridiculous. And I would find myself having this like bashful, smiling like face where I was just like, I can't really avoid the fact that I just lied. And what was happening inside of there is there was like this like guilty piece inside of me getting activated that I would get caught in a lie and people would be like, I can tell you're lying because you can't stop smiling about it. I'd be like, yeah, I'm lying. And then I get in trouble and be like, dang it. So we would go back and forth, but then finally started to learn, okay, there's lies that I care about and there's lies that I don't care about. And the lies that I didn't care about would be the ones that I would start having this bashful face on purpose. That way I would get caught in the lie. And what happened over a period of time is I started to train all the people around me that if I lied, I would get caught. And in doing that, it created this false sense of safety and security for everybody else that they thought that they could tell I was lying at any time. And I used that to my advantage. So then I'd have 10 lies I get caught in, and then I'd have the one that I wouldn't because I just say it with a straight face and I move right on. And so people wouldn't think anything of it and I'd get away with it. So it began to be this like manipulative game of learning, how do I actually use the system around me? How do I actually condition and train different people so that I can appear a certain way, so I can say certain things, so I can do certain things and still get what I want? Now, lying was a piece that didn't stop, right? It just continued. So high school, college, into marriage. Thought marriage was going to be the catch-all be-all. I thought it was going to like finish it up. I thought it was going to fix it. I didn't realize that marriage was just going to be exposing more, right? All it did was just expose more lies, more things underneath the surface. Because coming into marriage, there wasn't a change of heart. It was still the same exact person, same exact aspect of me, but I was coming into it being like, well, I'll just do the same thing that I normally do, which means getting to a place where I would continue the lies. Now, you might think like, hey, was it big lies? Was it little lies? It was like a bunch of just small, tiny stuff. Small, tiny stuff that kept leading to bigger stuff. So it might be like, why were you coming home late? Like, where were you at? What was going on? Like, who is that? All this kind of stuff, just like small, tiny nuances. But the thing is, all of those repetitious lies started adding up and adding up to the place where when I got to bigger lies, it felt easier. It felt better. It felt like, well, this is just what I do. And it got to a place where it didn't even feel like it was a conscious effort. It wasn't conscious anymore. It was almost like just roll off the tip of my tongue, like a knee-jerk reaction. Like, did you do this? No. Did you do this? No. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it was just a lie, 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 lie. And it was so easy at that point. Why was it so easy? Because I'd had years of training of how to lie. I've had years of training of working on this to make sure that I could lie at a drop of a hat and make something up really quick and not get caught about it and lie to be able to backfill whatever story I need to lie about. So there's a lot of nuances to it. So this opened up the door then to be able to bring other people into my life. So interacting with other women and having other women into our house as initially like friends and then eventually as emotional affairs and then as physical affairs, that became something that was part of the lies, right? Of how I would lie about, no, I'm not talking to this person. No, we didn't really have a discussion. It wasn't that big of a deal. We didn't spend time talking together. We didn't make out. And then all of a sudden like go down, like there was just a lot of different lies inside of all of this. And the lying piece, I want you to understand this. The lying piece for me, it wasn't about the person I was lying to. And it wasn't even about what I was lying about. It was just about me. Like, that's it. So many people get narcissistic stuff like confused and get all over the place. It's just about the narcissist. It's just about me in that moment. It's like, hey, I'm going to get caught with something that I don't want to deal with. I don't want to deal with the shame. I don't want to deal with the guilt. I don't want to be accountable in this moment. So in this moment, what is the best way to get away from this so I don't feel shame, so I don't feel guilt, so I don't have accountability? Easy. Lie. Because if I lie, then I don't have to feel that. Now, sometimes people are like, but why don't you just tell the truth and then you don't have to feel it? Well, yes, it makes sense logically, but for a narcissist, a lot of times that feels like death. And it feels like, okay, if I tell the truth and I feel the shame and the guilt, then it's going to be the end of the world. I know it's not. And I've worked through a lot of shame and guilt since then, so I don't have that trigger and have that peace. But then the moment, that's what it felt like. I got to avoid it at all costs because it's too uncomfortable. It's too bad. I don't want to deal with it, so I just lie. And this continued to be a piece over and over and over and over again. And until this shifted and until this changed, with me understanding that I was never going to be a man if I kept lying, that nothing was going to be different. I was going to keep having the same results in my life if I kept lying. That's where the light bulb moment started to happen. And then the road to change started opening up. But it had to come down to this piece of just an awareness that I was a liar, but not that I was a liar to everybody else, that I was a liar to myself. And that the reason I was a liar to myself is I didn't want to admit who I actually was. I didn't want to admit the dark side of me. I didn't want to admit that I wasn't a very good guy. In fact, I just wanted to stay really positive of like, I'm a great guy. I'm a good dad. I provide. I show up at the end of the day. But at the same time, I'm just a liar. Which means that I had no integrity, had no courage, had no connection, had no respect for the people in my life that I claimed to love. But as a result, I was hurting and I was destroying each step of the time. When you listen to this, does this resonate with you of your situation, of your relationship? Maybe you're a man listening to me today and you're like, hey, I identify with you because I am a liar. Well, then I want to talk to you. Go to rawmotivations.com. I've got a section for you to be able to fill out an application for us to talk. Maybe you're listening to this today and you're like, hey, I identify this as the woman because I see all of these lies that he continued to do to me and I'm left still confused. Was I worth it? Was it me? Why did he lie to me? Why couldn't he be honest to me? What was different about the other woman besides me? Like, there's just confusion. And if you're in that place, I want to help provide clarity and confidence for you. Because if I can help support you in that, you can actually find the certainty in who you are and actually rise up in your power again versus right now, it might be a hard function and you might be just in survival mode, trying to get through each day one step at a time. If you would, then go to rawmotivations.com as well. And I've got a section for you to be able to see what I actually do. Because there's hundreds of women that we help liberate through systems and modalities of teaching how to break out of a trauma bond, how to deal with helping healthy boundaries, how to actually move forward and find your own identity. And if I can help you with that, go to rawmotivations.com today. Thanks so much for listening today, and we'll see you back next week.